In episode 4, it's a big day for Commander Lawrence as he's about to become High Commander Lawrence. As he prepares for the ceremony, Naomi walks in and she tries to act like a wife, get close with him, some physical touching, but he pulls back. He wants nothing to do with any of that. Because of the cold nature of how he greeted her, she feels it necessary to tell him that now that he's a high commander, there's a lot of pressure on him. She tells him that the high commanders have a very specific set of priorities, which he cuts in and says, I know their priorities. Power will come from reform. They know I'm their man. While he's cold to Naomi, the person he's not cold to is his daughter, Charlotte. She comes in and she shows him the picture that she drew, and he loves it. He's really warm to her. He keeps it in his pocket. So at least there's somebody in that house that he enjoys. Commander Lawrence then heads over to go through the ceremony. The high commanders that are in attendance swear him in. The other commanders watch on, and Commander Lawrence is now High Commander Lawrence. As soon as the ceremony is over, Commander Wharton walks over to Lawrence and asks him how close the United Kingdom and Mexico are to normalizing relations. And Lawrence says, yeah, I think we're close. I mean, New Bethlehem is everything their leaders want. They get rid of the refugees, and their barren wives want to come and breathe in the sea air. That's when a Commander Bell gets the attention of the entire room and tells them that their car is waiting for them to take them to the celebration, which will be at Jezebel's. It's something that Commander Lawrence has really no interest in, but he's going to go anyway. Commander Bell invites Commander Wharton, but Commander Wharton just right away turns down the offer. To which Commander Bell mentions how his father, who must be a high commander in Washington, says that Commander Wharton doesn't join them at Jezebel's there either. And Wharton gives Bell a line about how his father is dedicated to Gilead and some mumbo-jumbo about vices. It's very biblical. The message, though, is clear. Wharton will not be joining them. You get the sense he really doesn't approve. Bell then turns his attention to Nick and asks him if he wants to go. And Commander Lawrence says, no, Nick, you should come. And you could tell that by Lawrence inviting Nick, he really is just doing it for a wingman purpose. But it's Commander Wharton who steps in and says, no, Nick, Rose has dinner prepared for us. While this is going on, Serena is outside waiting for a special guest to New Bethlehem. It's Rita. Rita has decided to go to New Bethlehem because she got word that they had a lead on her sister who she hasn't seen in years. When she arrives on that bus, there's Serena waiting to greet her, and Serena is very, very nice to Rita. Rita's cordial enough. I mean, she hasn't forgotten about what Serena did. But her main focus is clear. She wants to know where her sister is, and Serena tells her, I had to pull a lot of strings, and I assure you she will be here. But one of the big reasons why Serena pulled those strings is she wants Rita to stay. And she asks her, would you consider staying? But before Rita can even answer that, she sees her sister walking up, and she's reunited. She runs up, she hugs her, they embrace. They both talk about how they tried to find one another, but the main thing is they're back together. Serena then decides to let the two sisters catch up. She remembered that Rose had mentioned how she was craving sweets now that she's pregnant, and Serena decided to drop her off a pie. When she did so, though, Rose was sleeping, but Commander Wharton had a ride back home from the ceremony. And while Serena thought that it was going to be a quick drop-off, Commander Wharton says, I'd like some. Because it's become pretty obvious at this point that Commander Lawrence likes Serena, but he has zero game. So the two sit down, they enjoy pie. At first they talk about Rose's pregnancy and how it's a blessing. They segue into the fact that Rose's mother died at a young age. And then they get into morality and how every child deserves a chance based on the economic climate and what happened with Gilead, all that. He mentions how Serena's faith in the reforms is really a credit to New Bethlehem and how Commander Lawrence is lucky to have her out there campaigning on the behalf. She tells him that she just appreciates having this platform and having a voice, and he admits that he knows that wasn't always the case. He then gets real bold. He tells her, a better man would have encouraged your influence. Oh, things are getting spicy. When it's time for her to go home, Commander Wharton decides to walk her home, and he tells her how she won't remember this, but he saw her at one of the balls in D.C. years ago, and he thought she was gorgeous. Unfortunately, at the time, she was married. And don't worry, folks, he prayed for God's forgiveness because he coveted another man's wife. To which she cuts in and says, well, by that point, he was less of a man and more of an albatross. He continues, though, just spitting fire, telling her how he admits that he wished he was the one who was dancing with her that night. And then they hear music, and he decides, you know what? No time like the present, baby girl. Let's dance in these streets. It's not a sexy dance at all. No, it's more like 1940s slow dancing, but they're doing it until they're caught by Aunt Lydia. And this is the first time Aunt Lydia has seen Serena Waterford back. She doesn't say it outright, but with her eyes, she tells them, hey, you two need to leave some room for the Holy Spirit. Something I heard a lot in my grade school dancing years. Now, Wharton's son-in-law, Nick, he had to go greet Rita into where she'll be staying. And Rita sees him and mentions how it's great that he seems to be doing great. But then she asks him, is it true what they're saying about this place, how it's different? And he says, yeah, it looks like it. And it's my job to keep it that way. When she hears this, she tells him, then I'm going to stay, but only until you can get my family out. He tells her that it might take 1-2 years and asks if she's okay with that. And she says, yeah, for my family, that's fine. All the other commanders, though, they're at Jezebel's. Lawrence is doing his best to act the part, but he is visibly uncomfortable, especially when he sees one of the girls at Jezebel's is Janine. Commander Bell remembers that Janine was at one point his. And since it's his night, he decides to gift Janine to Commander Lawrence. Knowing that he's her best option for that night, he accepts. They go into the bedroom, but he makes it clear right away, we're not going to be doing anything. And that's fine with Janine. She doesn't really trust Commander Lawrence anyway. She gives him a whole lot of attitude. She says some really mean things about Naomi, which Commander Lawrence agrees with. But the whole dynamic, the whole mood in the room changes when Commander Lawrence pulls out the picture that Angela drew and he hands it to her. Janine asks him, what's going to happen with her? And he assures her, she's got a good life. Janine nods and says, yeah, now. But what about later? I mean, bad things happen to Commander's daughters, too. Are you going to help her? And he assures her, I will do everything I can to keep her safe. While Janine never thanks him for what he did, giving her the picture or just keeping her daughter safe, she does appreciate it. And Commander Lawrence does actually care for Angela. You see this when he gets home and he reads her a bedtime story. Now, over with Mayday, June is trying to get acclimated, but fact is, she wants to get the hell out of there. She got Luke and Moira safe, and now she wants to get back to Alaska. The problem is, Luke and Moira have no interest in going to Alaska just yet. They're deep in Mayday, and they want to make these commanders who kept Hannah in Gilead, well, they want to make them pay. That was the whole reason why they headed to that abandoned amusement park. That was the drop-off of the list of commanders who were responsible for shooting that plane down and keeping Hannah in Gilead. And now that they have that list, they can act on it. June kind of gets a hint at this when Mark comes over and tells Luke that his charges are being dropped and he's being deported to Alaska, and Luke isn't over the moon about it. He just says, oh, okay, yeah, that's good. And when they finally do have a chance to talk, that's when Luke tells her, I'm not going to Alaska right now. June thinks this is a big mistake. She reminds him that she also wants to see those commanders dead and Gilead hurt, but it's always something. You know, things aren't supposed to happen. It's supposed to be a routine mission, but things do happen. But to Luke, he hasn't had a chance to hurt Gilead. June has already. Now he wants his turn to make them pay for what they did to his daughter. She makes her pitch, but Luke tables the conversation for later. Not too long later, though, the head of Mayday gets everybody together in the same room, and she goes over the plans now that they have the list of commanders who were in charge. She tells the room that they're going to hit them at Jezebel's. They're basically to go in, guns blazing. First step is to kill the commanders at Jezebel's when they're not expecting it. Next step is for the bombs to go off. And then the military rolls in. And everybody's on board with this except one person, June. She speaks up and says, really, that's your plan? You're just going to roll in and guns blazing like it's the OK Corral? That's a horrible plan. You're not going to get past security. I mean, what about the women in there? If you don't tell them they're coming, they're going to be trapped in there in the crossfire. And because June starts pushing back on the idea, a few others start pushing back on it, mentioning how they don't even know what the penthouse at Jezebel's looks like. It's risky. And Ellen, the head of Mayday, says, no, we're not going in blind. We're going to do a dry run. Thanks to the intel that Luke and Moira got, we know when the penthouse will be empty and we'll get somebody on the inside to help us out. That person then will also tell the women working at Jezebel's what's up and they should be safe. But June once again cuts in and says, yeah, but what's the plan on getting those women out? I mean, they're not collateral damage. They are people. And Ellen tells her, yeah, in an ideal world, but this isn't an ideal world. And that's when Moira speaks up and says, I'll go. I mean, I'm familiar with Jezebels. I'll go and I'll warn the girls. And that's really risky. I mean, if Moira's caught, she's stuck in Jezebels. They're not going to be able to get her out. When the meeting disperses, June walks up to Moira and says, you can't go. But Moira pushes back on it and says, no, I am going. I mean, I know Jezebel's like the back of my hand, and I know how dangerous this is going to be. But June is terrified for her friend. Moira mentions how she appreciates the fact that June saved her, but somebody has to save the women of Jezebels. And June tells her, then let somebody else do it. She begs Moira to come to Alaska with them and have a life, but Moira cuts her off and says, no, I mean, look, I want that for you guys, but I can't live your life anymore. And that's a pretty jarring comment for June to hear. Now, they're doing all of this as intel pours into the printer, and it's basically the girls that they know are at the Jezebels. And this stops the conversation because when they get Janine's photo, it shocks the both of them. They thought Janine was okay. They had no idea that she's in Jezebels. Now that June knows this, she's got to act on it. She walks up to Ellen and she says, I need you to send me into Jezebels. I'll do the dry run, I'll scope out the penthouse, I'll connect with the women. Ellen reminds her that Moira volunteered to do this. But June makes a really good point, that if Moira gets stuck, she's stuck. They can't get her out. But if June gets caught, then they know they have a commander who will help them out, that being Nick. It seems to be settled. Ellen seems to accept the fact that it will be June heading in, and June goes to talk to Luke about it because, well, if she's heading in, then Luke isn't. Before she can even start to talk to Luke, Moira walks up pissed off because she's found out what June did. Moira is actually the one that alerts Luke to the fact that June went and talked to Ellen saying that she's going to go on the dry run and those two get to stay on the sidelines. And it starts a big fight between the three. Luke and Moira feeling like June just has to meddle. And at one point, Luke tells her, you know, you act like you want to go to Alaska and live this life, but the reality is you want to fight just as badly as we want to fight. Both Luke and Moira feel like what June did is so disrespectful. And that's when June pushes back and says, no, what was disrespectful is the fact that you lied to me for months and kept all this Mayday stuff a secret. Moira looks at her and says, I'm going to Jezebel, so either you can come with me or not go at all. And June shoots back, what are you trying to prove? But Moira tells her nothing. I have nothing to prove to you. June makes one last plea, telling them that they don't know what they're doing, they're out of their depth, they won't survive. But Moira looks at her and says, wow, you think that little of us, huh? She then tells June, do not follow me. And she turns and walks away. And Luke, he tells her that he's going to go drop off the bombs at the location that he picked because this is his chance to fight for Hannah. By nightfall, though, these two have made up. They sit down, they talk about it. June admits that, yes, she wants to fight because Hannah's in Gilead and she wants to make those people pay. And what she's really trying to save Luke from is that feeling that she's had so many times where you get so close to saving Hannah, but you're unable to. They talk about the difficulties of becoming a family again in Alaska, and then it segues into Hannah being the reason why they're going into Gilead alone on a wing and a prayer, essentially. She does get real with him and says, you know that if this Mayday plan would have worked perfectly, which it won't, but if it does, that doesn't guarantee we even get close to her. And Luke says, yeah, but we got to try. And that's what they're going to do. They're going to try.
Thank you so much for checking out this recap. Please consider subscribing to the channel and subscribing to my Patreon. Hit thumbs up if you liked it. Smash that thumbs down button if you thought it sucked. If you left a comment, I don't get back to you. I usually don't check the comments unless they're like a super comment. Also, if you don't see the next video up on the end screen, not to worry, it'll be up in a day or